Hello, how's it going, everybody? And welcome to Ask Me Anything About Politics. This is the show where you can ask anything about politics, regardless of how simple or complicated it might be. There's no judgments here, there's no roasting, there's no debating. It is just good faith answers to all of your good faith questions. Everybody's welcome here, Republican, Democrat, everything in between and on the outskirts. There's no debating here or fighting. There's no name calling. It's just engaging and trying to find a shared reality. If we can't even agree on what's going on, how can we solve all of the problems that are plaguing us here in this country? So throw your questions in the chat and we will get to answering them. I know that politics can be really intimidating when you're first trying to learn about it. I know it can feel like trying to learn a new language, especially with all the misinformation and propaganda that there is out there running rampant. It can be really difficult to figure out what's going on. And so this show is where you can ask all of those questions, and no one's going to call you uneducated or ill-informed or a fascist or a cuck. If you are somebody, you got a question you've always wanted to ask, but you're worried, if I ask this question, all my friends are going to think I'm a MAGA person. You can ask that question here. There's no judgments whatsoever. If you've always wanted to ask a certain question and you're like, if I ask this question, my friends are going to think I'm some sort of libtard, you can ask that question here, and no one's going to call you a libtard. You will just get a good faith answer in return. There's no debating. I don't do debates. I don't think that they're productive. So I am just going to answer your questions, and we can have disagreements. We can engage on the substance without, calling each other names or getting into fights or anything like that. What's up, DJ Moore? Good to see you again. Mimi says democracy, constitution, equality, and accountability for all. That sounds pretty good, Mimi. I'm not against that at all. Do you have a question? So throw your questions in the chat and we will get to answering them. Everybody is welcome, Republican, Democrat, everything on the outskirts and in between. There's no judgments, there's no roasting, there's no debating. What's up, East meets Westy? Good to see you again. It is just good faith answers to all of your good faith questions. So Wild West, hello, welcome. If you have any questions about politics, just throw them in the chat. I love my girlfriend like a lot says thoughts on the Texas California redistricting. So it's been lopsided warfare for a long time with Republicans exploiting gerrymandering for unfair advantages. The Democrats tried to pass a bill to make partisan gerrymandering illegal, and the Republican Party filibustered it. Racial gerrymandering is still supposedly illegal, but the Supreme Court seems pretty chill with it right now. So this problem is a problem of the right. It is Republican justices and Republican politicians that are continuing this problem. And so if they're not going to solve the problem, then it's incumbent upon the Democrats to fight, using the same tactics that they think are completely okay and fine. So yeah, I think Texas has redistrict made potentially a little bit too aggressively. And thank you very much to Ruth Power for helping me reach my first gift goal. So it could end up, what's the word? It could end up biting him in the tuchus. And so, we'll just have to wait and see how that all plays out. Mimi says, what is behind Trump's pardoning? Mostly corruption. It is mostly people are bribing him in order to escape legal accountability. TikTok says, opinion on Zionism. It depends on what you mean by Zionism. Some people think that Zionism means that the Israeli government can do no wrong, and some people think that Zionism means that the people who are currently living in Israel have a right to stay there. Gare says, if I am challenged to a duel at high noon in Washington by someone in Arizona, whose time zone do we use? I have no idea. Mike Jacobs says, voting equals a waste of time. That is inaccurate, Mike Jacobs, and I would really appreciate it if you would not spread that misinformation on my stream. If you would like me to tell you why voting is not a waste of time, I'm happy to get into it. Loop Tracer now, Fob I Shaker says, could Supreme Court deny California even after approving Texas's redistricting? No. From what I understand, and I haven't read too much into the opinion yet, but I think preliminary reporting is saying that the Republican justices kind of nodded to the California redistricting and saying that it was basically completely fine. All right, Mike Jacobs says, all right, Mike Jacobs, you're out of here. Congratulations. All right. Let's see here. Maya says, do you support Palestinian liberation? Yes, I do. Rocky says, why don't we go after the employers that hire undocumented immigrants? Because employers have money and power and immigrants do not. I believe that we should elect politicians that will change that. I believe that we should elect politicians that will go after employers as opposed to undocumented immigrants. And that means voting for Democrats because Republicans are never going to do that. Alrighty, let's see here. All right, excellent question so far, everybody. What's up, Lauren? Good to see you again. Okay, up Empire. That is not a question, so I'm going to go ahead and block you. Teaker Doody says, why would I ask a Stein about politics? That's anti-Semitic, so we're going to go ahead and get rid of that person. East Meets West, he says, so what do you think about Tennessee and the GSP that they were faced with? GSP, that abbreviation is, I'm forgetting for the moment what that abbreviation is referring to. It's a trap. Says, does the Geneva Convention apply to terrorists? Yes, the Geneva Convention applies to everybody. Georgia State Patrol, Tennessee, and the Georgia State Patrol that they were faced with. I haven't heard anything about this East Meets West. You hear people saying that the Georgia State Patrol were engaged in voter suppression during the Tennessee special election. Gap typo, and the gap that they were faced with. Yeah, I'm not really sure what you're referring to, East Meets West. Let me know. Expand on it. No Pseudo says, what do you think of the New York phone ban in schools? I am for it. We need to limit children's access to social media and screens. And so I am for that. Looper Tracer says, what are your thoughts on Trump getting the FIFA Peace Prize today? FIFA is a notoriously corrupt organization, so it stands to reason that they would be fine praising and celebrating Donald Trump, who is one of their ilk. Oz says, Nick Fuentes, that is not a question. East Meets Bestie says the 22 points. I mean, as far as so were they saying that they were predicting a 22-point gap in the special election, but there was only a 7-point gap? Is that what you're referring to? I love my girlfriend like a lot says, do you think Democrats will ever stack SCOTUS in our lifetime? Yes, if we vote for Democrats that are down with doing that. There are definitely more centrist, timid Democrats out there who are against rebalancing the Supreme Court after the Republican Party, rigged it in their favor. I think that there's a growing majority of politicians within the Democratic Party who are open to that, but there are definitely Democrats who believe in upholding some vague, institutional promise, and that will be against it. And so what we need to do as voters is find out if those are the specific Democrats that are running in our area, and then either primary them or put political pressure on them to have better opinions going forward. Looper Tracer now says, expanding the court. Yeah, I'm for it. Absolutely. Rizzo says, Democrats are more corrupt than ever before. That is inaccurate. Rizzo, ask a question, I'm going to boot you. Jack says, who'd you vote for? Democrats up and down the ballots. East Meets West says, the Republicans were ahead by 22. I think that the difference between how they were polling and how that election ended up is, I think, a great sign for Democrats going forward. And I hope that people will take that as, evidence that we should all be doing this work, because the work is working. The work is working. And thank you to everybody who helped me reach my second gift goal of the day. All right, I've got a gift box that is live. I have no idea what that means. All right, Andrew J. Rivers says, thank you, Jared, for doing the hard work. I think one of these TikTok sex boxes is going to vote blue. Andrew Rivers, notorious and hilarious stand-up comedian, popping into my life to do a little trolling. Thank you, Joy with Power. Thank you, doing your dad for real. Ooh, wow. all of our dads, thank you. I'm on team doing your mom, so what a power couple we could be. Okay, let's see here. Qui-Gon Corey says, Dems fund Israel, Trump funds Israel. There are more Democrats that are against funding Israel than there are Republicans against funding Israel. So if you want to empower the party that is going to stop funding Israel and stop sending them weapons, then you should vote for Democrats. Aiden says, can I get up? My answer to everybody who asks if they can get up is maybe. I am mercurial. I rule this live stream with an iron fist, and if I decide I want to let you up, I will. It is completely up to me. So put in your request, hang out for a little bit, and we'll see what happens. Teddy says, just wanted to donate because I love your content and learning about this. Thank you, Teddy. I really appreciate that. Skywalker Luke says, I know this is hard to understand, but what do you think of the, I don't know what those emojis mean. Does anybody know what Skywalker Luke is referring to? I love my girlfriend like a lot says, are there any right-leaning opinions that you agree with? I mean, there's no policy that the Republican Party has that I agree with. I'm sure that there are right-leaning people out there who I agree with on a lot of things, but we have been brainwashed into thinking that other voters are our enemy, but they're not. We share a lot of the same opinions. We've just been lied to about what the Democratic Party is and what the bases of both parties actually believe in. Askew Vision says, who would win in a fist fight, Obama or Trump? Definitely Obama. He's younger and more fit. Filter Guy says, there's nothing. I don't know what that means. Jujitsu Prince says, do you believe in the Russia collusion? There's nothing to believe, Jujitsu. It happened. It was a real thing that happened. That's what the Mueller report discovered. And the idea that the Mueller report exonerated Trump or proved that there was no Russian collusion is hardcore propaganda. Let's see here. Qui-Gon Corey says Dems and Trumps are equal threats. That is wildly inaccurate, Qui-Gon Corgi. Ask a question or I'm going to boot you. Okay, Luke Skywalker Luke says Trump was elected by the Israelis working with Epstein. It wasn't the Russians. Skywalker Luke, that is inaccurate. Please ask a question or I'm going to boot you. Mimi says, will the people get the most out of the e-files? I am worried that the Patel FBI has been busy redacting information that is damaging to Trump and his billionaire buddies. So I don't think that the information we get from them is going to be as illuminating as it could be, but maybe we'll be able to get that information from other places. Lemmy Gardenmeister says, have you read studies showing right-wingers have lower brain function at the prefrontal cortex? I did read a headline. I did not dig into the study. I want to be as open to people on the right as humanly possible. And so I am not going to hype up anything that suggests that they are stupider or worse than other people. Now, there are some statistical correlations that I find very illuminating, like the fact that if you don't graduate from college or don't graduate from high school, you are more likely to vote Republican than somebody who does. And while I don't think that makes people on the right stupider or more gullible, I do think that maybe you get something from an education that allows you to kind of see through some of the BS that we see from Republican politicians. Okay, John868 says, what do you think on the Minnesota Somali problem? So Somali immigrants in Minnesota is not a problem. The Republican Party is trying to make it seem like it's a problem. There was, of course, this big COVID funding scam that was led by a white person, by the way, not by a Somali, but a bunch of Somali people were involved in working the scam. But yeah, immigrants are a net positive on the country, particularly the Somali immigrants that are living in Minnesota. So yeah, I don't think that we should buy the framing of this being a problem of Somali immigrants. Christopher M. Lewis says, I think you're talking about indoctrination in college. No, college and high school do not indoctrinate children. There are movements on the right that are trying to create indoctrination programs in high school and college to bring people onto the right side of politics. But that doesn't exist on the left. Brian Davies says, when is Mango Mussolini going to leave office? So he's either going to pass away or he's going to get voted out of office or he's going to be not able to run for re-election in 28. He's going to try to stay in office until he's dead, but whether he's successful is completely up to us. Not that guy says 90% of Somalia on the government dole. That's why Democrats love them. That is not accurate. Not that guy. Ask a question. Oh, you just said Trump for king. So that's an automatic block. All right. Thomas Fleming Jr. says, see, that's what's wrong with the left. You completely lied to your teeth. That's not the expression, which makes me think that maybe you're not even a person who is in America. George Mattingly says, you lie often or just when you are talking. I never lie. Thomas Fleming says, there is definitely indoctrination happening in schools from grade school all the way through college. I mean, there is on the right, like that's what things like Prager University are. But there's no organization or, conspiracy to indoctrinate children in grade school, high school, or college to left-wing ideologies, Thomas Fleming. And if you have any evidence that that's happening, then I'd be open to seeing it. But, this is a part of a right-wing narrative to try to convince people to not get an education because they know that their base is mostly the uneducated or undereducated. Thomas Fleming, are you here to engage in good faith? Are you open to this new data that I'm giving you, or are you literally just here to spread misinformation? Let me know. Mimi says, what are your thoughts on remigration in Project 2025? I literally just learned what remigration is. And if I'm remembering correctly, it is like, white supremacist shit. So I don't remember too much about it, but that's like vaguely what I remember. All right, Jonathan Swift, 89 says, what do you think about NATO? I mean, NATO is 100% necessary. Like we're looking at Russian aggression towards their neighboring countries. And so, like, it was very smart of them to form that coalition in case Russia tries to invade any of them. Kingston, good to see you again. Enrique says, is Trump a pred? There's a woman who was suing Trump because she claims that he sexually assaulted her when she was 13 years old. He has admitted to barging into the dressing rooms of underage beauty contestants in his, beauty queen contestant, whatever thing it was. He palled around with, that fellow with the island and the plane for a long time. They were seen together a lot. He has that birthday card drawing that really seems to be an underage girl in there. So, where there's smoke, there's fire. It seems like it. I can't say definitively yes or no, but it does seem like it. Thomas Fleming says, if there's no indoctrination, why were the liberals show up in arms over the Florida Don't Say Gay ban? That's a really good question, Thomas Fleming. Thank you so much for asking it. So the reason why liberals were up in arms over that is because that was blatant discrimination against people in the LGBTQ community. It was also really legally dubious for teachers who were LGBTQIA, because if a student asked them, why don't you have a wife or a husband or something, it was legally dubious for them to say yes or no. The Don't Say Gay bill was basically banning books that had any gay characters in them. And that's really damaging for children who are growing up LGBTQ. Like, representation really matters for people in marginalized communities. What do you think about that, Thomas Fleming? Let me know. Alrighty. Tammy Take Talk says, do you think the Affordable Care Act will be extended? I actually don't know about that. It's so strange to me that Donald Trump did not negotiate with the Democrats when they were doing the government shutdown over this. And now he's negotiating with his own party over doing this. Like, it's fucking bananas, man. Like, he recognizes how politically damaging this could potentially be for him. And so now he's making those moves. And it doesn't seem like the Republicans in Congress are open to that, which just shows you how committed the Republican Party is to their make poor people suffer campaign, like secret agenda. So yeah, I don't know what's going to happen with that. Nobody does. But I do think it's weird, and I think that Republicans really fucking shat the bed. Like, they could have negotiated with Democrats over this during the shutdown and looked like fucking heroes. Like the Democrats, everybody would have forgotten that the Democrats shut down the government for this. All they would remember is that Republicans extended the health insurance subsidies, and then their prices did not skyrocket. But they fucking fumbled the ball so badly. Democrats were giving this to them on a silver platter. Apple user says, don't support Bernie Sanders' view on H-1B visas. I don't know what his specific views are on H-1B visas. Filter Guy says, do you believe in having a sense of national unity and identity in America? Yeah, I mean, I worry that that is a dog whistle for white supremacy. But national unity and identity in America doesn't sound bad on its face. User a bunch of numbers. So let me guess, Donald Trump has never done not one single good thing. I mean, I don't think that the good things that he's done outweigh the bad things that he's done. Use a whole bunch of numbers. WB says, would you say you're politically biased on these live streams? No, I would not. I love my girlfriend like a lot. Says, when is the next time the government can shut down? And can it happen again with the Affordable Care Act at the end of December? So the next scheduled government shutdown will government shutdown. The next fight over the spending bill that could potentially lead to a government shutdown is going to happen in January. At that point, the die will have been cast, and I believe the next time we could see insurance rates being affected would be like maybe less than a year away. But that would still mean like Americans would be suffering from wildly escalated, accelerated healthcare costs for like almost an entire year or maybe longer. Right, WB says, LOL, you are 100% politically biased. It's actually hilarious. You don't think that. I mean, I don't think you know what bias means if you think that I'm biased. All right, Jonathan Swift says, what do you think about Nigel Farage? I don't know too much about him. He is a right-wing guy, right? I'm pretty sure that I remember him, and I'm pretty sure he's a piece of shit. Kingston says, do you think if a Democrat wins the next presidential election, we can get rid of ICE once and for all? Probably not. Getting rid of ICE is not popular across America, even amongst people who identify as Democrats or on the left. I do think that it is a good idea because ICE has been acting like a rogue agency even since the Obama administration, and they have acted barbarically and illegally and unconstitutionally. So I think it's totally merited. I think we would need to have a massive Democratic representation and specifically progressive representation in Congress for us to even attempt to do that. John 868 says, do you believe in assimilate or leave? I mean, to some extent, I think it's your responsibility to, if you're going to move to a new country, to, not expect that country to, mold to your needs. But I don't think that you have to, stop speaking your language or, stop celebrating your customs. Celestial Dragon Slayer says, what do you think about Netflix's acquisition of Warner Brothers from Discovery? Possible monopoly. I mean, I think that all these mergers are heavily in the antitrust category. And while I'm not really sure, the ins and outs of it, I would say that, it being a monopoly is not going to stop it from happening if they just grease Donald Trump's palm in the right way. We need a Democratic administration so we can get another Lena Khan type in the Federal Trade Commission so that she can start breaking up these monopolies, because we're not going to have any sort of equitable capitalism while these monopolies are controlling all the resources. While 99% of everything is owned by like 10 companies, there's no equitable capitalism in America. User a bunch of numbers says, and open the border all over again. The border was never open during the Biden administration. Steve J says, Democrats haven't done shit for us. That's not true, Steve J. Would you like me to tell you some things that Democrats have done for Americans in the past, 15, 20 years, something like that? Steve J says false. So you're just here to say that I'm wrong and not to actually engage. So you're out of here. User a bunch of numbers says, how can you sit there and lie about how many people they let in this country? I never said that they did. That a bunch of people didn't come into this country, but they didn't let them come in. So, alrighty. Wall Chair says, which political party do you lean towards? I'm a progressive Democrat. Alrighty. Let's see here. Send a new one to attract more followers. What the hell is what is this gift box thing? I don't know what that means. Kingston, Dakota says, what are the pros and cons of getting rid of ICE? The pro would be we would have border security and immigration enforcement being done by an agency that is actually adhering to oversight. The con would be people would think getting rid of ICE is bad. Like, there's really no, substantive con to it. It's just messaging and how Americans feel. Jeb Freeman says denial is not just a river in Egypt. Not really sure what you're referring to. Thomas Fleming Jr. says, are they coming in now? No, because Trump's not letting them in. Biden had the same ability, but did not. So Thomas Fleming, what you're saying is like half right and half wrong. It is true that Donald Trump has severely limited immigration in this country, and he's done so both legally and illegally. Like, he is operating unconstitutionally without, like, trying to get things passed through Congress. And he does have some right to do that as president, but some of the stuff that he's doing, he's only able to get away with because he has a sympathetic Supreme Court, where anybody who is really being serious about following the law would be smacking these down left and right. Now, my question to you, Thomas, are you down for answering a question for me, Thomas? Let me know in the chat before I pose my question to you. Awesome Sauce says, if you can't say your side did one thing bad and the other side did one thing good, you're brainwashed. All right, well, I have never said that. So Sophia says, what's your view on abortion? I am pro-choice, but even if you are pro-life, you should still vote for Democrats, because Democrats actually decrease abortion, Republicans don't. All they do is make pregnancy more dangerous for women. Awesome Sauce says, no side is perfect. Yes, but the Democratic Party is way closer to being perfect than the Republican Party. Filter Guy says, how would socialism be embraced, seeing as it's caused the worst atrocities in recent history? Socialism has caused no atrocities in recent history. There are governments that call themselves socialists that have caused atrocities, but they're not actually socialist. If you're an authoritarian doing atrocities, then you are by definition not socialist. All right, Thomas Fleming, so here's my question to you. What the Trump administration has basically done with immigration is made it virtually impossible for everybody who isn't white or rich to immigrate into this country. Do you think that that's a good policy? Do you think that we should only be letting in people who are white and rich to this country? Do you think that no other immigrants have value? Do you think there's no problem with that whatsoever? Let me know what you think about that. And don't say he's not doing that, because that is exactly what he's doing. I'm asking you what you think about that specifically. MJV says, do you think it's helpful for liberals to hold lives, suggesting both sides are the same? I do not think that that is helpful. It is also wildly inaccurate. Both sides are not the same. Democrats are better by a lot. Sophia says, Democrats support ending innocent lives while Republicans protect innocent lives. That is inaccurate, Sophia. Are you open to learning why that is inaccurate, Sophia, or are you just here to say no? Let me see here. Thomas Fleming says, well, he's not doing that. Of course you're going to say that. But we don't need third world country trash. It won't solve their own problems. So it's interesting, because I said that only white and rich people are coming here, and then you said that all brown people are third world country trash. Like, is that what you meant to imply, Thomas Fleming Jr., that all brown people are third world country trash? Because if that's really what you think, like, it seems like you maybe have some conscious or unconscious racist beliefs, and I don't think that that's really productive for us to be conversing. If, like, you just believe in your heart that brown people are worse, then I don't know if we can have a productive conversation about politics. H-Down says, there is proper process. Yes, that is true, but that is not what Trump is upholding. Let's see here. No, any third world country, doesn't matter what their color, national. Okay, so why has the Trump administration made it so that only white and rich people can come into this country if it's just third world country trash that you have a problem with, Thomas Fleming? I'm going to be honest with you, Thomas Fleming. Like, I don't really believe that you're here in good faith. So this conversation is probably going to be ending soon. Just letting you know. Sophia says, explain why it's inaccurate. Don't pro-choice policies allow abortion access, which takes a life? Okay, Sophia, thank you so much for asking that question. The reason why it's inaccurate is because the Republican policies to try to get rid of abortion are to make it illegal. And that does not stop abortion, and it does not even decrease abortion. There are more abortions happening now after the Dobbs decision than there were during Roe versus Wade. And additionally, because of these abortion bans, there are women who needed to get medically necessary abortions who weren't able to get them and then died. I think something like 5 women have died so far. So because of Republican abortion bans, not only are there more abortions than there were before, but an additional 5 women have died, and more women have suffered unnecessarily because of not being able to get medical care. What do you think about that, Sophia? This guy's just spamming the comments with Stein. That's anti-Semitism. So That's it. Thomas Fleming says, typical liberal, when points are made, they want to end the conversation. No, it's just when somebody proves that they're racist, I don't want to be involved with them anymore, you know? And I'm really sorry to your mom, you know, like it's a bummer that she has a racist child. I'm trying to give her a non-racist one because of how much I'm fucking her without a condom. Alrighty, and thank you everybody for helping me reach my third gift goal of the day. Spiritually Sexy, Julia Power, and Joe Padilla, y'all are the goats. Joseph Basson says, did you know you go against due process because of invasion or for public safety? It's in the Constitution. Joseph, I don't know if what you said was accurate. I'm not really sure what you mean. It kind of isn't phrased great, so maybe you can clean that up and re-put it, and maybe we can get to answering that question. Filter Guy says, oy vey, avoiding questions. Sass says, I'm sorry, it wasn't during the Biden administration that Roe versus Wade was overturned. Yes, it is true, Sass, that happened during the Biden administration, but that doesn't mean that it was caused by Biden or the Democrats. What happened was the Republican Party installed in the Supreme Court, in ways that were actually kind of shady and sketchy, and some might say like cheating, they installed a bunch of Supreme Court justices that were picked specifically to overturn Roe versus Wade. Now, they didn't get the case that would allow them to overturn Roe versus Wade until they got to the Biden administration, because the last justice, Amy Coney Barrett, wasn't sat until the very, very tail end of the Trump administration, with something like, I don't know, like a week and a half left. So yeah, it 100% was the fault of Donald Trump and the Republican Party, even though it happened during the Biden administration. Right. Jonathan Swift says, what do you think about Keir Starmer? Again, British politics is not my specialty. I like Labour. I don't know if he's a great Labour leader or not. If it's a Labour politician, I'm going to be for them. If it's conservative politician, I'm going to be against them. Right. Kingston says, even if a Democrat does win the next presidency, what happens if Kristi Noem and others refuse to leave on a peaceful transfer of power? So I'm not 100% what the mechanisms are by which they will be forced to leave Kingston, but they will 100% be forced to leave. Like, that is not a power that they have to stay, past their tenure. SP says, does Trump have dementia? It kind of seems like it. But there's levels of dementia. Like, people with dementia have good days and bad days. So thank you, Joe Padilla and Drew with Power, for helping me reach my fourth gift goal of the day. All right, Sass says, I'd like you to look at the state of Illinois and look at what Democrats have done. Sass, did you, it doesn't really seem like you are here to ask questions. It seems like you maybe have, Filter Guy says, I know you see my question sign. Filter Guy, weren't you like one of my regulars who was not here? How about the welfare state doubling crime through the 60s and minority populations? Yeah, I thought that you were my buddy. Filter Guy, yeah, you're out of here, man. Sorry, that is not the kind of rhetoric that I allow to have on my live stream. No fucking right-wing bullshit talking points. It's only good faith engagement on the issues that we allow here. Gorilla Goo says, you vaguely resemble Zach Handel at first glance. I don't know who that is. Sophia says, what is your take on ICE and Border Patrol? So ICE is a rogue agency. They are acting barbarically. They are acting illegally, unconstitutionally. They are detaining and abusing American citizens, veterans, Native Americans. They are deporting people who are here completely legally and have done nothing wrong. They are putting people in concentration camps like Alligator Auschwitz. I cannot say enough negative things about ICE as an agency, how it's being run, and Donald Trump for enabling them, and for the Republican Party for tripling their fucking budget. So now they're like the fifth most well-funded law enforcement agency on the globe, more so than like the Italian army. And and the thing is, like, they're not even solving the fucking problem. You know what I mean? Like, they're not solving the problem that they're trying to, that they claim to be solving. All they're doing is being inhumane monsters. I love my girlfriend a lot says, do you support the death penalty in any situation? No, I do not. Right, Jacko says, where was that Jacko comment? How do you feel about Biden flooding the U.S. with 11 million illegal migrants? So Biden did not do that, Jacko. If you would like me to clarify exactly why that is an incorrect thing to say, I will happily do that. Yeah, I don't know who Zach Handel is. Lewis Wilcox says, why do you think federalism is unpopular in the United Kingdom? That I do not know. Sass says, do I pay the highest taxes in the nation in Illinois? I have no idea, Sass. Alrighty, let's see here. Tracy says, Trump, MAGA, God will win. That's a block. Somebody very sexy named Kirsten says, my hair looks good. Ooh, how about that? Okay. Wendell Smith says, so no women have died while having an abortion. I'm sure some have, Wendell Smith, but that's not by design. Like, women have died because they need abortions, and the only thing that was stopping them was some stupid fucking law. Whereas, medical, accidents or emergencies happen with every procedure. Like, do you think we should get rid of every procedure where an accidental death can happen? Jacko says Biden did flood it. I see you just avoid the question. I didn't avoid the question. I literally told you, if you want me to tell you why it is the case. Oh, yeah, no, you're out of here, buddy. Sorry. You didn't respond to my question. All right, scrolling down the bottom. Seb says, why block do you push false narratives? No, but there's a bunch of people on here who are not interested in engaging in good faith. They just want to fight or say anti-Semitic shit or, push inaccurate narratives and misinformation. Jonathan Swift says, what do you think about communism? I'm for employee-owned companies, and that is basically what communism is. John Selfer says, did you know, Jarrett, that if a president is impeached for treason, his or her whole administration must go? I did not know that. That is really interesting. Podcast Central says, Jarrett, let me be your controlled opposition. No, that's not a thing, and I'm not looking for that. Dip says, stop answering questions with a question to avoid answering. I don't do that. Kate the Grateful says, wow, Jarrett, you're getting hit on like crazy today. Yeah, sure. Sean says, based 100%. Let's see here. Yeah. That's very sweet. You're going to make me blush here. Wendell Smith says, is some more than 5? I see what you're doing, Wendell Smith. And honestly, I'm going to block you if you continue with this. Ask a question. Vidiot says, are politics even necessary anymore? I think so, because the more that we know about politics, the better we can vote, the more informed we can vote, and the better we vote, the better our lives are. Mimi says, why is ICE torturing human beings? I think they want to. I think they want to do that. I think they like the power. I think they like hurting people who don't look like them. Yeah, it's fucking disgusting, Lewis Wilcox says, if someone is an illegal immigrant, then the courts should prove it, not the ICE authoritarianism. That is 100% accurate. Tom DeYoung says, do you support the death penalty during pregnancy? No, I do not. But abortion is not the death penalty. Okay. R. Ben says, what torture? The torture that ICE is doing to people. Rational Beard says, is it legal to enforce immigration laws? Yes, it is legal to enforce immigration laws, but that is not what ICE is doing. Mama Deb says, under this regime, women who have miscarriages can't be prosecuted. That is accurate. Ali Bay says, choose between 100 8-week fetuses or one 8-week-old baby. I guess I choose the 8-week-old baby. Philip says, what do you think the Democratic Party needs to change in order to fix this mess that we're in? I think mostly the issue is structural changes that the Republican Party has implemented in order to benefit them and the billionaire class. The Democratic Party probably needs new leadership. Like, I don't love having centrists as the leaders, but not everybody in America is as progressive as I am. And so if we vote for politicians that then vote for people like Chuck Schumer and Hakeem Jeffries, that is what America voted for. Okay, Rational Beard says, how is ICE not enforcing immigration laws? So part of immigration laws is due process, Rational Beard, and they are not granting people due process. They are deporting people without due process. They are imprisoning people without due process. They are abusing people in these ICE facilities. They are disappearing people. They are deporting them to countries that were not their country of origin. Like, all of those things are barbaric, illegal, unconstitutional, etc. Loading says, oh, so you do lean left. Thanks for being candid about it. Yeah, I've never tried to be coy about it. Lewis Wilcox says, your centrists are equal to the British center right. I don't disagree with that necessarily. Podcast Central says, Jarrett, block that anti-Semite for disagreeing with us. I mean, I block people who are anti-Semitic regardless of if they are agreeing with me or disagreeing with me. Joe Padilla says, sir, I'm in Wyoming. Gas is $2.09 a gallon. How and why? Is that high for you guys or is that low for you guys? I don't know. Wendell Smith says more women and babies have died from abortion than not being able to get an abortion. You know, Wendell Smith, that's a little bit of a misleading statistic because Dobbs has only been overturned for the last 5 years, and women have been able to get abortions since the dawn of time. Uncle Hippie says, "Do you think MAGA is going crazy today because they know Trump is a murderer?" I don't know. You know, there's just like more people out today, I guess. Bobo says, "Do you think the bill banning dual citizenship will pass?" I have no idea, and I'm honestly not really sure what the benefit of it would be. Sophia says, "What is your view on Israel and Palestine?" I am for both of those countries, but I am against the governing bodies of both of those countries. Both the Netanyahu government in Israel and Hamas are guilty of war crime, and the Israeli government is guilty of perpetuating a genocide on the people of Palestine. A says, "Do you have an Israeli passport?" No, I do not. I am an American citizen. I do not have dual citizenship. Kimberlina says, "If you are against abortion, don't have one." That is excellent advice, Kimberlina. Lewis Wilcox says, "Why are you against both governments?" Again, because Hamas is a terrorist organization that has done war crimes, and the Israeli government is guilty of both war crimes and perpetuating a genocide. Okay, Joseph Boston says, "The suspension clause is what ICE is doing. ICE is in the Constitution." ICE is not in the Constitution, Joseph Boston, and there is no legal justification for their behavior. It is not the suspension clause. That is a made up thing. It doesn't apply. That is not accurate at all, Joseph. And I hope that you will, you know, consider getting your news from other sources. Loading says, "Although we lean different directions, you have respect for thinking for yourself." Thank you. Thank you, Loading. What do you think we disagree on? Let me get over to YouTube and Twitch real quick. Jonathan Swift says, "What do you think about the war on terror?" It was stupid. It didn't work. Just like the war on drugs. John Selfridge says, "Do you think that if Dems take the midterms in both houses, we'll see Trump impeached for treason?" What Trump will be impeached for, I do not know. But if Democrats get the majority in the House, he is 100% going to be impeached. And the things that he could be impeached for are multitudinous. They could fill a swimming pool. The Nightman comment says, "I'm more scared about a Vance presidency than the Trump presidency." Thoughts? Honestly, opposite for me. Trump has the value that Trump has is the base. They love him. The base does not love JD Vance. There are a lot of people who are trying to inherit the base from him. They will fail. Mostly they will fail. And so I am a lot less worried about JD Vance. All right. Willie, what's up? Good to see you again. Podcast Central's got to go. All right. I trust my regulars. See you later, Podcast Central. And Spiritually Sexy and Joe Padilla, thank you for helping me reach my 5th gift goal of the day. All right. Wall Chair says, "Which people tried understanding each other rather than hating based on political stances?" I completely agree with that. I don't hate anybody based on their political stances, but I do hate Republican politicians who have enabled exponential suffering of both American citizens and people abroad. Sophia says, "Why do you think that?" Because, like, I'm very much MAGA, but I would probably prefer Vance. Really? You're a MAGA person, Sophia? Thank you for being here and thank you for just asking questions and not being a troll like so many other people who identify as MAGA are. But why would you prefer Vance over Trump if you consider yourself a MAGA person? John 868 says, "What is your main news source of news?" I take it from a bunch of different sources to try to avoid any bias. I use Ground News. I use the Reddit news thread. And I listen to a lot of podcasts and read a lot of nonfiction. Barney the Big Red Dog says, "Can you break down HR 25? By the way, thank you. I am leaning left now. Thank you for educating me." Thank you, Barney the Big Red Dog. I would love to take some credit for that, but I'm sure I cannot be the source of that. HR 25. What is HR 25? Repealing the income tax. HR 25. So the way that taxes, there's a bunch of different ways that we tax people. You know, there's property tax, there's consumer taxes, like whenever you buy something, sales tax. There's income tax. There's estate taxes if you pass away and you want to, give your children all of your inheritance and shit like that. And depending on which taxes you either inflate or decrease, you are making the tax burden for certain demographics worse or better. Getting rid of income tax helps the wealthy and hurts the poor. Increasing sales taxes hurts the poor and helps the wealthy. So, in order to make up the revenue by getting rid of income tax, you would be, increasing sales tax and property tax and shit like that, which would hurt poor and working class Americans. Alrighty, gotta go. Good to see you, Kingston. Thank you for being here. Alex Fontilla says, for me, Carter is the most pragmatic president, while Trump is the most polarized president. Agreed. I honestly don't know enough about Carter to say if that's accurate or not. I like Carter as a person, but I need to learn more about what he actually did when he was president. And as far as like polarized, I don't know if I would say that Trump is polarized, but he polarizes people. Like, he is polarizing. Yeah. All right, let's see here. Graviel Lokian says, who pays more in property taxes, the rich or the poor? So the rich pay more in property taxes, but the poor pay more in relation to their income. Taking $1,000 from someone like you and me means a lot more than taking $1,000 from a billionaire. So it makes a difference, the percentage of their worth, when you are equating the tax burden on an individual citizen. Sophia says, because Trump is not conservative enough. Wow, that is, I find that to be really, really striking that would be your opinion, Sophia. And let's not listen. Sophia is not trolling. She is not. She's asking questions. She seems like she's here in good faith. So let's all be nice to her, okay? Let's see here. Thai Animation says, well, the most recent news on the government. What's your opinion? There's no good news coming out of the Trump administration. It is all pretty terrible. Five War Production says, who's your favorite founding father? I don't know enough about all of them, but I do find Franklin to be pretty fucking hilarious because he's such a fucking horn dog. Do you know that he once wrote an essay about if you're gonna have an affair, you should have an affair with an old woman, and then he listed out like 13 reasons why, and one of his reasons why was that their pussies are basically the same as young pussies, Okay, Rich Man Vance says, why would you be against doing away with taxes? Because taxes help everybody. Taxes help pave roads and educate our children and fund our military and our fire departments. Taxes are great. Righty. Dan Blackbird says he also had syphilis. I don't know if he did. I know he had gout. Right. Joseph Bosson says, it's funny, no one reading Article 1, Section 9. Okay, Joseph. I'm close to booting you, Joseph, just to let you know. Maybe you want to get back on my good graces or some shit. Let's see here. Rich Man Vance says, tariffs do the same. Yeah, but tariffs are a sales tax. So we are basically, all right, Joseph, congratulations, you're out of here. Yeah. And yeah, that's why I'm against tariffs. They are a sales tax on Americans, and they hurt poor people and working class people. Mohammed Ebb says, POTUS says trillions collected from tariffs, but isn't that coming from our own pockets? Yes, and also he's lying about how much has been collected. Alina on the new phone says, hi, hello back. John Selford says, repealing the income tax and replacing it with income from tariffs doesn't work. It was tried in the 20s. And look what happened, although that wasn't the only cause of the crash. That is very interesting. Yeah, there's a historical precedent for it. Dan Blackbird says you can have gout and syphilis. Don't they fight? Aren't those two diseases that don't like each other? Toaster Shuro says, what if we blew up and started over? We do not know what kind of government would arise from the ashes, and so I do not recommend that. Richard Dryas says 1913. I don't know what that means. Seaflon says, love how I went from getting booted from lives to being a big fan of yours. Well, that is, I don't know what you were doing on those other lives, Seaflon, but you have been nothing but a perfect and respectable human being on mine. Rich Man Vance says, tariffs are the way forward. They are the way to increasing inflation and fucking over America, Rich Man. Ask a question or I'm going to boot you. Barney the Big Red Dog says, can you put light on the new CCA program that New Mexico introduced? I feel all states should do this. The CCA program. What is the CCA program, New Mexico? CCA program, New Mexico. Child care assistance. Oh, yeah. That's child assistance and child care assistance is great. I don't know too much about that program specifically, but yeah, the child income tax credit, the universal childcare, universal pre-K. Like all of those are incredible programs that I think we should tax the rich in order to fund. Space Plum says there's never ever going to be a tariff refund check under Trump. I tend to agree with that, Space Plum. Kimberlina says let's tariff yachts and Rolls Royces. I wouldn't be against that. Toaster Strodel says, if you don't mind, where are you from and do you like your state? So I have lived in California, Ohio, Pennsylvania, and New York. My favorite place that I have ever lived is New York. I am currently back in California for my wife's job. Islandberg says, is there any argument for communism and has any socialist communist country ever worked? So there's never been a fully communist or socialist country. The only countries that have socialism and communism are in them are countries that are also capitalists today. So Norway, Sweden, America, Canada, England, like all of those are a combination of socialism, communism, and capitalism. In America, we have a little bit too much capitalism. Like we should not have private healthcare, for example. It is a really bad system that is both expensive and delivers worse healthcare outcomes. And causes people to go hungry because they need medical treatment that they can't afford. But yeah, countries that have called themselves communist or socialist have actually been dictatorships, and by definition, you cannot be a communist dictatorship or a socialist dictatorship. Okay, Fogworld Productions says, okay, do you have a least favorite founding father? Probably Thomas Jefferson. One of the slave owners. I don't love that. Carmine says, can I sign you up for the FIFA Peace Prize? I don't know if I would really want to be recognized by an organization as corrupt as FIFA. Hey, Feeholic, hello there. Hello back. You never told me why you consider yourself to be a Republican, Hey, Feeholic. I'd love to get into your political philosophy. Toaster Trudeau says, I guess politically, what do you like about New York during the time that you were there? So, there is a gulf, unfortunately, between the perfect Democratic run ideals and actual Democratic run states. Like a lot of places that are quote unquote fully blue tend to be packed with a bunch of very centrist, neoliberal, conservative light kind of Democrats. Like Andrew Cuomo ran New York for a really long time, and he basically ran it like a centrist Republican. But there were a lot of really great things about living in New York, like public transit, for example. Having a state with a progressive tax structure like New York means that you are able to invest in things like, public education and public transit and stuff like that. So yeah, there were a lot of things about the government of New York and California that I think were great, but other things that I'm like, well, that could change. We could probably really use a Mamdani to make it a little bit more of the Democratic ideal as opposed to the centrist ideal. K-Flow says, thoughts on the grand jury records for the Epstein case being unsealed? I'm totally interested in seeing what comes out of that. I have no idea what will be in there. Toaster says, I'm from Boston, which isn't too different from New York, so I understand need public transportation. Oh, I fucking love Boston. It's one of my favorite cities. Dano says, it's hard to tax the rich. What kinds of taxes can we create to tax purchases and expenditures? So there are mechanisms for taxing the rich, but one of the things that you get when you have a lot of money is that you can afford the kind of high-paid accountants that are really good at hiding your money and stashing them in offshore accounts and shit like that. But we can end those practices if we just write correct legislation. If we are able to close those loopholes and actually enforce it by funding the IRS, then we can tax the rich. Like, it is very much not impossible. People like Andrew Yang have talked about a wealth tax or a value tax, which would go after people that don't necessarily have an income, but just borrow based off of their net value. And I think all of that stuff is totally valuable to attempt to look into. Like, let's get the what do you call it? What the fuck is that agency that the CBO? Let's get the CBO looking at those and see, what the score will be. Sophia says Trump does support conservative values, but it's not to the full extent. a lot of the times. Do you think that Trump is doing a good job right now, Sophia? I think you probably can tell that I think he's doing a really, really bad job. But do you like some of the things that he's doing, Sophia? Jake Clips says, yes, let's halt industry and steal unrecognized gains. Jay Clips, you are spreading billionaire propaganda, so I hope you're getting paid for that. If you're trying to be cool by licking billionaires' boots, I think you're probably going to fail in your goal. So yeah, I hope you're a paid troll, because otherwise, you're just kind of like doing all this work for billionaires for free. Rachel says, have you thought about running for office yourself? I've thought about it, but it doesn't really fit in my life, unfortunately. Alex says, I think the Democratic Party is too liberal, and I don't really like their policies on immigration. Interesting, Holic. There's a study that just came out that went over how people view the Democratic Party, and I would love to get your take on this, because I find it very illuminating. It kind of feels like the impression that people have about the Democratic Party is different from what the Democratic Party actually is. So, Holic, tell me what you think about this. The majority of Americans believe the Democratic Party has gone too far to the left over the past decade, and the Democratic policies that they dislike the most are defund the police, free health care for undocumented immigrants, and lowering the voting age to 16. Now, what's interesting about that, I think, is that the Democratic Party has not, and is not currently trying to do any of those things. Some Democrats are open to those things, but there's no bill or push. It hasn't been in any of the platforms of the Democratic Party for the last couple of decades. But then same people were asked what they wish the Democratic Party would be doing. And what they said was raising the minimum wage, making healthcare better and more affordable, and not cutting benefits like Social Security and Medicare. And what's interesting is that the Democratic Party was trying to do that and is currently trying to do that. So for some reason, the impression that Americans have of the Democratic Party is being too far to the left because they believe that they're doing things that they're not doing, and they're not actually taking care of Americans by doing the things that they want them to be doing. But those are the things that Democrats actually are doing. So tell me what you think about that, Haifa. I'm really interested in hearing your opinion. Period says, pretty sure Kamala said that. Kamala said that she was open to it, but that was not part of her platform in 24. It has never been a part of the Democratic platform. Sophia says, yes, I do support Trump because I believe he is saving America. Why do you disagree? There are a lot of things that I think make Donald Trump a really bad president, Sophia. For example, have you heard about the fact that he pardoned a notorious drug runner from Honduras? Have you heard about the fact that he pardoned a crypto fraudster because that crypto fraudster gave him a lot of money? Have you heard those stories? Sophia Enrique says, are you Republican? No, I am not. Period says, didn't Kamala want 16-year-old voters? She didn't. She might want them now. The only thing that happened where Kamala Harris and that policy is concerned that I know about is that recently, now, as a private citizen, she said on a podcast that she thought it might be a good idea. Jake Clip says, Trump not fabulous, but he's far better than Kamala. Completely disagree with that. Jake Clips, ask a question or I'm going to boot you. 312 says, what do you think of Swift letting Trump play her music? T Swift, you got to get your shit together. It's fucking 2025, almost 2026. We are done fucking being milquetoast around Donald Trump. You're one of the most powerful people in America. You fucking supported Kamala Harris. What the fuck are you doing? It's time to play hardball, girl. All right, Sophia says, but pardons only apply to less than 5% of crimes. Most are at the state level. Very few. Sophia, I gotta tell you, I find that to be pretty unconvincing. I don't think that the president should be pardoning people because they pay him money. That seems pretty corrupt, don't you think? What if? So here, let me tell you about a real thing that happened, Sophia. Is that there are these rich people who have scammed American citizens, and they've been found guilty of fraud, and were then charged with paying back the Americans that they scammed, some amount of money. Donald Trump got paid by that person to pardon them, and now those people are not going to get restitution from the fraudster. That is a real thing that happened. That is so that is a real thing that happened. Do you think that that is an okay thing that Donald Trump did? Uncle Bill says, kind of like pardoning your son. Uncle Bill, if you want me to get mad about Joe Biden pardoning his son while Donald Trump is selling pardons for millions of dollars, you're barking up the wrong fucking tree. I'm not going to defend Biden pardoning his son, but it's not nearly as worse as Donald Trump pardoning fucking millionaires because they gave him a bunch of money, and now American citizens who got frauded are not getting their rightfully earned payout. Ratch 832 says source question mark. I don't have it memorized, but if you send me a DM or you email me through my website or you hit me up via my discourse, I will happily send you any and all information that you require. Toaster Strudel says, didn't he pardon that guy that was sentenced to 7 years a couple of weeks ago? Yes, he did, 100%. Dan Blackwood says, Biden made 82 pardons. Trump has already pardoned. Dan Blackwood says nearly 1,500, but I believe it's over 1,600 at this point. Okay, Sophia says, but you can only pardon federal crimes, which are less than 98% of crimes because they're at state level. Sophia, you're not really answering my question. Like, he is selling presidential pardons. Do you think that's okay? Do you think it's okay for the president to sell pardons to people who owe American citizens money and then they don't have to pay that money back? Sophia, I'm starting to think like you might not be a real person or maybe not an American because, really doesn't seem like you are listening to me or taking that shit into account, Okay. Jake Clips is crazy. The only opposition he doesn't block is Sophia, the 16-year-old girl. Kind of creepy. Oh, I didn't know that Sophia was 16-year-old, Jake Clips. Kind of weird that you're diving into the bio of a 16-year-old girl. I just see the names and like little profile pictures that I can't even tell what people look like. Okay, but Jay Clips, congratulations. You have officially annoyed me to the point where I am now blocking you. Congratulations. I was just reported for inactivity. This is something that right-wing people do to try to boot me. Okay, let's see here. Hey, Alex says, I have a question. Do you think having no voter ID policies on election day is okay? So that is an excellent question, Hey, Alex. Let's talk about voter ID policies. There is no problem that needs to be solved with voter ID. There is virtually no voter fraud in America, and what exists does not change elections. But Republicans have pushed this idea that we need voter ID because there's all this voter fraud that's happening out there. But here's the thing about voter IDs is that they are strategically designed to suppress Democratic voters. What they have found is that poor people, people of color, tend to have IDs in lower numbers than people who are white and conservative. And so it helps them to win elections by keeping those people from the ballot box. Are you still with me? Are you still with me, Hafey? Let me know, because there's more to this story. It gets crazier. Okay, Spike says, would you have a valid argument against ending these people? What do you mean ending these people, Spike? Sophia says, no, I don't agree with it, but I mean, every president has done it. Sophia, not every president has sold pardons for money. In fact, I would go so far as to say that if it's happened in the past, it's been very rare. Usually there are mechanisms by which we stop that from happening. The fact that Trump has sold one pardon is a massive fucking scandal, and no other president has been credibly accused of having done that. And Donald Trump has done that multiple times for multiple people who are guilty of murder. Donald Trump has pardoned. I think that's stunning, Sophia. What do you think about that? Alrighty, and thank you to everybody who helped me reach my 6th gift goal of the day. All right, Cooking Up Chaos and Star Trek Fan for Life and Drew with Power, y'all are the goats. God damn. I feel like this has been a really good live. Like, we're engaging with people who are not, like on Team Democrat, and I'm so happy to have good faith conversations with people who don't 100% agree with me. Oh, okay, let's see here. AI says the Clintons didn't. They made a whole movie about it. You mean the one that was made by fucking Dinesh D'Souza? Like, that is straight up propaganda and not a reliable source. Okay, Haifa, are you still here? I have more to say about voter ID. Are you still here? I asked. I was telling you all about voter ID, Hafiholic. I need to know that you're still here for me to continue that rant. Oh, you're here. Fantastic. Okay. So so the Republican Party has admitted this. Like, we know that that's their plan because they have admitted that they do this specifically for voter suppression. But even if they hadn't admitted it, my compromise is let's make IDs free and easy to get, because that's part of their suppression method. Is they make them, if it costs $80 to get an ID, which I've definitely paid $80 to get an ID, there are people who cannot afford that. And in Republican states, they will shut down DMVs in Democratic areas. So people have to potentially drive 3 hours away to get an ID just to vote. Like, what do you think about that, Holic? All right. Drew Lux is amazing. E-Man isn't the lead convo, almost like they planned it. I mean, the E-Man stuff is coming out, and we'll find out about it. There's other things to talk about, I guess. Johnny Flytrap says, facts. Where I used to live, it was 75, and it was over an hour away from my rural community. Seems pretty sus to me, Johnny Flytrap. All right. JP says, Martin Luther left the Catholic Church overselling pardons. Isn't that interesting? Right. John Selford says Taylor Swift has not publicly authorized the use of her music by the Trump administration, and her silence on the matter has raised questions as she typically protects her music rights. Yes, I find that to be pretty interesting as well. Space Plum says Andrew Jackson was a total piece of shit, but don't think he was a founding father in traditional sense. Was he? Yes, I think Andrew Johnson came along too late to be a founding father. You know what's difficult about Andrew Johnson? Like, he was a piece of shit, but he was an entertaining piece of shit. Like, he did so many fucking duels, like, with guns. People said that he did so many duels, there were so many bullets in him, that if you shook him, he would rattle like a bag of change, So I'm not saying he was a good guy, but that's fun. That's fun. Okay, Sophia says, do you not see the huge risk of voter fraud if we don't implement voter ID laws? So, Sophia, there has never been a single case of voter fraud that we have found that has actually changed the outcome of elections. It is such a small problem. You could probably count the number of voter fraud cases that we've had in, the last 2 elections on 2 hands. I'm talking about like fewer than 10, potentially. I think Texas did a investigation into voter fraud in their state over 50 years, and they found something like 16 cases, Sophia. Yeah, I would love, but here's the thing, is like, whenever I bring up my voter ID compromise, people on the right, they don't say, okay, let's make them free and easy to get. They say, well, what's so hard about getting $80? What's so hard about driving a couple hours to go get their ID? As though people don't struggle, as though there aren't people out there with 3 jobs who are barely able to make ends meet because cost of living has gotten so bad. Right, Sophia? Okay, Godon says, if you can't get those, why are we giving these people the ability to vote? Because everybody deserves the right to vote if you're an American citizen, Godon. Do you not think that every American deserves the right to vote? That you should be, that you should have a certain amount of money before you can vote, Godon? I don't agree with that. Sophia says, but the looser the ID laws, the more fraud will become common. I don't think that's accurate at all, Sophia. Just because something is free and easy to get doesn't mean that people will be able to fake getting IDs. If you're trying to steal election, like, fake IDs is a very not scalable way of doing it. So yeah, I would encourage you to think about this issue as not, people are trying to steal elections by voting illegally, but the Republican Party is trying to keep people from voting. People who have as much a right to vote as you and me. At least me, you're 16. I've been told. I'm glad that you are at least interested in politics. If you're so young. I had somebody on the live stream yesterday who was like 14 and said their favorite president was Reagan, and I was like, I don't agree with that, but I'm glad. Sophia says that she's 19. Okay, so yeah, I'm really glad I booted that too, because he was really just fucking being a dick. That girl's 16. Why are you talking to a 16-year-old, you fucking creep? What a ding dong. All right, Joe Padilla and Muzz King, thank you so much for helping me reach my 7th gift goal of the day. You know, we are well over an hour, but I'm just having a real fucking time with you guys, man. Like, I can't fucking get enough. Can't fucking get enough of y'all. Okay. Godon says, I agree, everyone does have the right to vote. Do you think they deserve the right to vote? Rich was here. Godon. Rich was here, says, Sophia, please go do research on this. It does not exist. Yeah, Sophia, you know, if you are living in a MAGA household or you were raised in a MAGA household, I can imagine that a lot of the things that I'm saying may sound like completely insane and out of the blue. But so long as you are able to find resources that are not right-wing sources, you should be able to, double check all the things that I'm telling you. And you will most likely find that they are 99% accurate, if not 100% accurate. Period says, I've seen a lot of Somalis lately not integrated into USA culture. What is your take? Integrating takes time. They're legal residents. They came here the right way, and they are a value to the community. Like, everybody in Minnesota is talking about how much they love them. So yeah, it doesn't really seem like a problem to me. Digital Micah says, did you see Mark Kelly's speech? I saw the beginning of it, and I mean, he's so fucking cool. He's like real tough. The way that like Trump and Pete Hegseth, they're fake tough. Like, he's fucking cool, man. He's a fucking cool ass former astronaut veteran. Like, you don't get fucking cooler than that. Saint Chief Keith says, who do you think the nominees will be in 28? I have no idea. Toaster Strudel says, he was caught on wiretaps. Who was caught on wiretaps? Who was caught on wiretaps? Shark says, why is Ronald Reagan seen as one of the better presidents in recent history? He gets really hyped up by the Republican Party. He sort of like set in motion a lot of the conservative policies that we're still suffering from today. He was popular with a wide swath of Americans. He had like massive electoral wins. And he was a great communicator. They called him the great communicator. The substance to what he was doing was terrible, but that's probably why people have that opinion. Okay, Sophia says, since you're a Democrat, I was wondering if you have any criticisms for Kamala, and if so, what's the biggest one? So my biggest criticism of Kamala Harris are she's a little hard to pin down. Like, she was running very progressive when she was running the primary in 2020, and she was running a much more careful and centrist campaign in 24. And I don't know, I think that reads as insincere, and it makes me worried what your actual policies are if you are communicating so many different things. There was a lot of I've read a little bit about some of the behind the scenes that happened between Biden and Harris and their teams, and it seems like there was just some like real like more politicking than actual governing. And I don't know, I find that stuff to be really, really gross. Now, I trust Kamala Harris to be a better president than Donald Trump and really any Republican. Like, any Democratic candidate is probably going to be better because they're not going to stand for some of the corruption that we are seeing happening in the Trump administration. But she 100% was not my first choice for a candidate, not by a long shot. I have a lot of empathy for her because mounting a presidential campaign in 107 days is a mountain of a fucking task. But she has that like politician disease of like sounding really focus grouped and saying things to get elected and not standing by principles, which I believe she has. Like, I think that if she was, in the interviews that I have seen where she seemed like she is talking more off the cuff, I've liked that Kamala Harris. I just don't think that she ran like that, and I don't think that we saw enough of that Kamala Harris. And there are some policy stuff that she did, like when she was AG, or when she was the DA in California. But she did some good things there as well. Like, she reduced the recidivism rates in California, which like that in my opinion is the entire point of jail, is to reform people so they can go back to being law-abiding, productive citizens. But yeah, there are other things that she did that I didn't care for. Right. Thank you for your question, Sophia. Sophia says, I mean, she failed to secure the border as vice president. What do you think about that? So it is true that Biden kind of put her in charge of the border. What she did do is travel to countries, south of the border to try and solve some of the root causes of immigration. Like enforcement is only going to get you so far, but if you can stop, powerful cartels and civil wars and authoritarian regimes, then those people don't need to leave their home countries in the first place. Immigration is a little bit of a complicated issue to discuss as far as like, was Kamala Harris good or bad? Because she was the vice president, so her resources were somewhat limited. And, if coming from a MAGA sphere the way that you are, Sophia, there might be some things that I say that you just think are like completely made up. Like, for example, the border was never open during the Biden administration, but people on the right love spreading that narrative. But here's what I will say about immigration and Biden and Kamala versus Trump and Republicans, which is that, and let me know if you're still with me on this, Sophia, because I think it's important that the Democratic Party recognized that immigration was becoming a problem, that so many people were coming over the border that it was becoming a problem. And so they worked with the Republican Party on a bill to address some of those problems. And please double check this on non-right-wing sources and you will see that it is accurate. So they work on this bill and, it's a compromise bill. So there's some stuff for Democrats and some stuff for Republicans. And in fact, there were so many concessions for Republicans that some people like AOC didn't endorse the bill because they thought that it was too much for the Republican Party. And, this was the Democratic Party saying to the American people, like, we have heard you. You guys have told us that you are really concerned about how many people are crossing the border. So we are working with Republicans to do something about it. And so what happened to that bill, Sophia? Do you remember what happened to the bill? Like, are you up on politics enough to remember what the end result of that bill was? I will wait for your response, and I'm gonna head over to Twitch and YouTube and answer some of those questions while I am waiting. Okay, let's see here. Space Plum says, I think Sophie is just regurgitating Fox News. I mean, Sophie's a 19-year-old, so, we all have our own different journeys of politics. Sometimes people just regurgitate what they hear on Fox News because that's all they hear. There's no tea or shade for people that are engaging in good faith, no matter how MAGA you are. Alrighty, JP, let's see here. Reagan was an actor a bit like Tom Hanks, simple, cowboy, likable. That is also accurate. Ivan Zoo says, hey, I'm a disabled veteran. I'd like to know your opinion on fluoride in our drinking tap water. Do you think it causes homosexuality or autism? No, it does not. That has never been proven in any studies. Heinz El Montaras says, hello, greetings from Germany. Guten Tag. I think that's German. Average Joe says, I need to correct an error I made yesterday. Texas accounts for 17% of all U.S. payday loans and 53% of all fees collected. I think I said like 7% to 20% yesterday. That was incorrect. I apologize. Well, thank you for correcting, Average Joe. I think your numbers were close enough. All right, Sophia says, are you talking about the bipartisan immigration bill from early 2024? Yes, I am, Sophia. Do you remember what happened with that bill? All right. Rich was here suggesting questions respectfully, though. Good dialogue. Yeah, Sophia, you are so welcome here. I hope that you will come back time and time again. I am happy to engage with people in good faith, even if we are on opposite sides of the political spectrum. Hayfiaholic says, do you think Pete Buttigieg should run again in 28? He ran in 20 or 24, if I'm not mistaken. He did run in 20. I don't believe he did not run in 24. And he can run if he wants to. He's not my first choice because he's a little bit more centrist than me, but he's a great communicator, and I think representation is important. So I think it's very powerful for somebody who is in the LGBTQ community to be running for higher office. I think that a lot of Americans are probably really worried that America might be too homophobic still to elect a gay president. But yeah, go for it, Pete, if you like. Alrighty, let's see here. Real Bendis says, thoughts on corporal punishment instead of jail for non-violent offenders. Corporal punishment? You mean like beating people, Brenda? Is that what corporal punishment is? I thought so. Going on. People have been screaming about immigration for a decade, but every Dem was screaming racist when it behooved them. They changed their messaging. I don't buy that at all, Go Don. Just letting you know. Right. Toaster Shooter says, can you please explain to these people how bad Reagan really was for all Americans? Please. I don't know if I have the juice for that at an hour and 20. Rach832 says, do you have more respect for John McCain Republicans than Trump Republicans? Oh, 100%. Absolutely. Okay. Sophia, yeah. Do you remember what happened to that bill? Let me know. Okay. That sad dinosaur says, what's more likely, Trump getting impeached or the Jets winning a Super Bowl? I do not know what the odds are of the Jets winning the Super Bowl, but if Democrats take the House, which is likely, then Donald Trump is 100% getting impeached. So I would say getting impeached. Paradigm says, I can't believe there is still a Democratic Party. Why? Democratic Party is great. They've done a lot of really great things. Okay. Heinz says, if I may ask something, do you think the U.S. will ever leave the bipartisan system? Yeah. I mean, the Democratic Party is making moves towards incorporating ranked choice voting, which is the way that we can open up our politics to other parties. And so if we empower the Democrats to do that, then they will make that a, what do you call it? They will make that a, a federal policy potentially. And then, we will have more than the two ascendant parties. Sophia says Republicans voted against it because it included foreign aid and wasn't effective enough to close the border. So, Sophia, that is the narrative that a lot of people on the right perpetuated about it, but that is not what really happened. Are you open to hearing what really happened? Are you just not going to believe me if I tell you, though? Like, let me know if you're open to this information, because I'm not here to fight you or argue with you, but it really is that is very much inaccurate what people on the right are saying about that bill. If the only thing you hear me say today is that it's inaccurate, they wrote the bill, so they would not write a bill that they didn't want to vote for. Then let's see. I'm definitely open into it. I'll look into what you say and take into consideration. I appreciate that, Sophia. So here's what actually happened. It wasn't the foreign aid, because the same Republicans that voted against the immigration bill literally voted for that foreign aid after killing the immigration bill. So that part is not accurate. It's not that they didn't think it was effective enough. They wrote the bill. There were more concessions for them than for Democrats. The real reason why it got killed was because Donald Trump called up the Senate Republicans and said, do not vote for that bill that you wrote, because I want to run on immigration as an issue. And I want this to stay a problem so that I can win the presidency. Now, to me, that says that you have no legitimacy. That says that you have no rights to take a stance on this issue. If you are willing to keep a problem a problem just so that you can win political power, I'm done with you. Aside from the fact that what they are doing right now in the name of protecting our border is barbaric and illegal, I can't say enough negative words about it. It's stunning, Sophia, and I really hope that you look into it, because it's just it is so obviously immoral. It is so obviously unchristian what they are doing. Alrighty, let's see here. AV Alex says, is it okay that I mostly watch Fox News, or do I need to watch some other sources? I mean, Hafiaholic, some people think that it's important to watch Fox News to get other perspectives. But what we have seen through a number of different studies is that right-wing media sources are the least accurate. So really, all you are seeing is propaganda. All you are seeing is right-wing propaganda. There was a study in 2012 about right-wing media. People that watched it are worse, are not as informed as people that do not watch the news at all. So they were worse informed than people that don't watch the news at all. More recent studies coming out of PolitiFact put the accuracy rates of right-wing news sources like Fox News at something like 22%. So I don't think anybody should be watching right-wing news sources, if only for the fact that it's not accurate. It's not real, So yeah, I would say, stop watching that. Stop watching it. Let's see here. Babinda Thornberry says, "Oh Lord, sorry, sweetie, wrong chat." All right, well, you're welcome back anytime. Not Batman says he wants you to watch his propaganda. I don't watch propaganda, and I'm not doing propaganda. HC Cali Expat says, "What we're doing right now makes me ashamed I ever wore a uniform for this country." I'm really sorry to hear that, HC Cali. I mean, I'm glad that you are, seeing the real things that are happening. And, I think it speaks volumes that you are ashamed of what this country is doing, as I am. But, it sucks to have devoted some of your life to, serving, and then to have your country do this, afterwards is, yeah, I'm sure that feels like, I'm sure that feels terrible. Okay, Banda Boss, good to see you again. Fletch Lives again says, "Is that the first or only occurrence of that happening? Not doing something good so your party can win?" No other examples are coming to mind, though I am extremely confident that it has happened. And I'm even more confident that it has happened on the right. I'm sure it's happened on the left too, but it does feel much more like a right-wing thing to do, in my opinion. Let's see here. All right, everybody. I went over time today because I was fucking cooking, and we met some great new people today. We got into Hayfie Holics politics. We met Sophia, and she's great. Obviously, all the regulars, you guys are dope as hell. I got a new viewer from Germany, Heinz. Heinz asks, "But wasn't the ranked choice system only for the primaries, or did they intend to introduce it in normal elections?" I believe that they're introducing it in the primaries is one step towards, instituting it nationally, where the Republican Party is trying to make ranked choice voting illegal nationally. So, Aaron Davies says, "Do you like filter?" I don't know what that means. All right, everybody. I got to start wrapping things up. I'm fucking exhausted. Thank you, everybody, for being here. If you want to support the show financially, you can, but you do not have to. You can join my Patreon for as little as $1 a month. You can buy things from my store, and also you can send gifts and become super fans and subscribers on TikTok and Twitch and YouTube and all the various channels. Godon says, "What are your thoughts on term limits?" I am for them, for Congress and for the Supreme Court, for judges in general. Let's see here. If you have Amazon Prime and you want to support the show for free, if you subscribe to my Twitch using your Amazon Prime profile, you give me $2 and it costs you $0. And so I would really appreciate that if you guys did that. And thank you very much to Triska and Lauren for being 2 of my Amazon Prime Twitch subscribers. Thank you, my super fans on TikTok, Susie, Sean, Dean, and Hot Sauce. And thank you to my patrons, Robert, Shannon, Carmine, and Patrick. You can get thanked too, guys, at the end of the live streams if you join my Patreon or become a super fan or become an Amazon Prime Twitch subscriber to my channel. Regular streaming schedule is Monday through Friday, starting around 11:30 a.m. Pacific time. Hayfie Holic, come back and let me know what you thought about that study that I told you about. I missed if you had a response to that. You can send me a message with your response if you would rather do that instead. But I really do want to know what you think about that study. Let's see here. Sophia, please come back again as well. And let's see here. If there are any questions that you guys have that I was not able to get to or that come up later, my DMs are open, and you can email me through my website, or you can get in touch with me via my Discord channel. I want to be a resource for you guys. I want to be a resource for you to be better informed and to be more involved in politics. And so if I can be that resource for you, I want you to use me and abuse me, use me until you use me up. The Discord is my favorite resource right now because it's not only a great way to get in touch, but you can build a community with other people that are fans of the show. And there are great recommendations there for books and podcasts, and also great organizations for you to both donate your time and money to. And lastly, just my heartfelt plea that everybody that is watching this do the work, because it is only through us doing the work that we're going to be able to get out of this fucking nightmare that we are currently living through. Mike says, "What do you think about Palantir?" I am extremely worried about the right-wing tech billionaires like Peter Thiel. They seem kind of cuckoo bananas. They have way too much money and power, and it seems like they are really interested in collecting a whole shitload of data on American citizens for malicious purposes. Drew says, why do you think there is such polarization of political viewpoints in higher ed versus GED? You know, I'm actually not really sure what the breakdown is in regards to political viewpoints in higher education versus getting a high school education. Do you mean like the fact that people that go to college tend to come out Democrats versus people that don't graduate high school tend to be Republicans? Like, is that what you're asking about, Drew? Let me know. Okay. Hey, Alex says, we'll meet again tomorrow. Oh, I'm not streaming tomorrow. It's the weekend. I take the weekends off. Yeah, Drew, is that what you're asking about? Let me know. Otherwise, we're gonna start. We're gonna finish the wrapping things up process. Have an excellent weekend, everybody. Do the work. Be good to each other. Be good to yourselves. Self-care is part of the work. And I will see you guys on Monday. Drew got back to me. Going up tier of higher education, the higher percentage blue leaning, have a poli-sci degree myself. Yeah, so I think it's interesting. Some people on the right would claim that it's because education indoctrinates people to be on the left. There's no evidence of that. Some people claim that only stupid people vote for Republicans. I think that's kind of mean and inaccurate. But I think that there are things that you learn when you get an education. Like maybe there are some critical thinking skills that inure you to the kind of conspiracy theories that push people to the right. Maybe getting an education and learning about other ways of living and other cultures and other people's struggles throughout history enables you to have empathy. You know, there's a nonfiction writer named, I think his name is Stephen Pinkett, who wrote a book called Our Better Angels about the decline in violence through human history. And one of his claims is that just reading fiction and seeing movies is part of an increase in human empathy. And, you know, when you go to college, you read books and you learn about, you know, other people and their struggles in their lives. And so, yeah, I think that probably has something to do with it as well, you know. But yeah, great question, Drew. Thank you so much. All right, everybody. I will see you guys on Monday. Same bat time, same bat channel. Have a great weekend. Take care. Bye-bye.